Hello, friends and enemies, heroes and villains. Welcome to Epic Realms. I'm your host, Nick. Today, our guest is New York Times bestselling author. With over 30 million books sold, he's got one of the largest followings of dedicated fans. His works has had an influence on other authors, artists, video games, and more. Please welcome to the show, R.A. Salvatore. Welcome. How are you doing?
Good. Am I one of the villains?
You
I
could
can
be.
be.
That is up to you. That is
Okay.
all up to you. Sometimes,
Good.
hey, sometimes some of the best villains turn into the best heroes, and you would know more than anyone because you've written them,
Yeah, they were never villains. They were just misunderstood.
right? They're
Yeah.
also probably some of my favorite characters. So we just came off of Gen Con 2022. You were the guest of honor. How was your weekend at Gen Con?
A little busy.
A little busy? You signed a
No, it's
couple
good.
autographs?
You know, there were a few people I remembered
Okay.
because I haven't been there for like 7 years. And it's changed quite a bit. We're getting to the point where the turnover is pretty extensive from like the 1980s
Yeah.
for a lot of reasons that you could probably figure out. But I saw some old friends, but mostly I met new people. And it's always great meeting people who are kind of walking down the road of adventure with you. And that's how I look at the people reading my books. We're on this road of adventure together, and what's going to happen next.
Yeah.
So we had a good time. Very busy.
Very busy. Do you consider yourself an extroverted person or more of an
No,
introverted person?
God, no. I am a massive introvert. These things take all the energy I can muster, even like this streaming thing.
Yeah.
I was the shyest kid in high school. I It's funny because when I was like in elementary school, I was a really good athlete right into junior high, and then I destroyed my knee. Actually, before I destroyed my knee, I had some just problems with my knee that developed as I was growing. And so I didn't play any of the sports that I had always played, and kind of fell behind in everything, and was small in junior high school and bullied, and then
Yeah.
had that growth spurt and wasn't small in high school anymore, but I was shy.
Yeah.
I never had a date in high school, couldn't muster the courage to ask anyone out. And then one day I got to college and I said, my life's going by and I'm not in it. And I tried to fight it hard, but
Yeah.
it really took a lot. It actually took me finally getting to the point where Bob Salvatore and R.A. Salvatore are two different people.
Okay.
So R.A. Salvatore can handle a convention, then he comes home and Bob Salvatore crawls around the house for about a week.
Yeah.
It's rough.
Do you have any things that you do to prep for a big convention like that?
Not really. At this point, I used to, but at this point, I've been doing the shtick for 30 years, right?
Yeah.
It's I don't want to say it's old news, but like when I'm in front of, I know a lot of the questions that can come at me. I know how to answer them. After 30 years of being on a stage in front of people, you come to know what works and what doesn't.
Yeah.
So I don't really worry about it nearly as much anymore. The biggest thing for me is just the disruption in my day-to-day life that a convention will bring.
Yeah. Do you have a big cool down time at the end where you get home and you're like, nobody talk to me, leave me alone for a few
I
days?
want to have it, but I can't because this week of the e-signings, the book is releasing tomorrow.
Yeah.
Um, and so I've got podcasts all week. I've got like 3 or 4 this week, and I've got to do like the 2 e-signings combined were well over 1,000 books that I'm going to have to sign, many of them personalized.
Wow.
An e-signing, for those who don't know, is you order it from either rasalvatore.com or RA Salva Store, which is my wife's store. And there's a place where you can put like, to Nick.
Right.
And then I'll fill something in and sign it. Or you can say like, happy birthday, Nick. And I'll put that in the book. Or you can just get it signed. Yeah, so I got all those books to sign this week and a whole bunch of other promotional things I have to do. Plus my wife is escorting my daughter's family to California this week because she's moving to California to go to med school. So
Are they like driving or flying or
they're flying, but
Okay.
she's got 2 kids and a French bulldog, so she
Yeah.
and Kevin can't handle it alone. So my wife's going to go and take care of one of the kids. We'll let Kevin get stuck with the French bulldog, and Katie can have the new baby to take care of. But so they're going out to California, and so that's going to be busy. And then I have a signing Friday night this week at Gibson's Bookstore in New Hampshire. That's about an hour and a half drive from me.
Okay.
And then I have to get ready for next week when I'm going out to Seattle for Emerald City Comic Con. I'll be doing that over next weekend, and then I'm going in to see the people at Wizards of the Coast while I'm out there, and then I'm going to get in the car and drive down to see some friends who live on the West Coast for a couple days.
So non-stop, but at least you get to visit some people that are friends. See the countryside.
Yeah, he's a good man. He's
do you
a
get
fellow
time to
writer.
enjoy events like this when you go to say an Emerald City Comic Con or you go to a Gen Con? Do you get time for yourself to go and be like, I want to go play some games?
No, I don't play
or
games
is it like
at
everybody
cons.
sees you and you don't have time to take for yourself?
No, it's not that. I don't play games at cons for a couple of reasons. First of all, I'm very private about my gaming. My group is mostly family and friends that go back 30 years.
Yeah.
But beyond that, if I go and sit down at the game changes immediately, and it can ruin it for other people.
Yeah.
Depending on how some people at the table react or don't react. You know, some people can get mad. Oh yeah, what's he doing here? He's going to take over our game, or just, oh my God, I can't believe you're here. Or, hey, in this book, did you do that? And we're trying to play a game. You know,
Yeah.
It hasn't worked out well in the past. I just avoid gaming at the conventions.
Yeah, which is
I
sad.
don't really have the time anyway, because you know, you go from a panel to try and grab some lunch before the book signing, and the signings can be 2-3 hours. You're sitting
Right.
there, and then when you're done that, you just want to get outside.
Yeah, I can understand that.
Even though it was like 180 degrees in Indianapolis last week.
How
So
much
it felt
do you,
like anyway.
how much do you get to play games on your own, like just in normal life? Obviously, right now you're super busy with a new book and signings, but like on a normal day to day, do you get to play a lot of gaming? Do a
No,
lot of games or
once a
games?
week we have a game, a tabletop role playing group
Okay.
gets together every Sunday night. And other than that, the only game I've played in a long time is WoW Classic. Actually,
Okay.
I don't have. The other thing is I used to game a lot more, but then when 38 Studios blew up, it was painful. So I just kind of fell away from gaming for a long while, because that was like 8 years ago, and I'm still falling away from gaming.
Yeah.
Online, I mean, you know.
You do have a presence in a lot of video games. Do you have a lot of direct interaction with some of the? I know that they have the Idle Champions, which they have some of your characters
Yeah,
in, and they had
I
Neverwinter.
work with,
They had a whole section on Neverwinter about Gauntlet Grim. I don't know how much you had to hand.
I wrote
those.
it.
Okay.
My son Brian and I wrote that one. And my
Okay.
son Gino and I just wrote another thing for Neverwinter. So
Okay.
I'm back working with Cryptic with that, and I've worked with 2 games. I worked with Atari many years ago.
Mhm.
I'm wearing my Mutant Arm T-shirt. Went down and consulted with Mutant Arm a few years ago. So yeah, I've worked with a lot of computer game companies. I have friends all over the industry.
Do you enjoy doing
Obviously.
that? Does that
I
bring
love
you
it.
joy? Because I mean, being a
Yes.
person who plays video games or played video games, to go, hey, I've had a hand in these.
I think if I played more, I probably wouldn't like working on them as much, because
Okay.
it's like when you're a writer, when you're a writer and then you go to read another book, you read it like an editor, and it takes a lot of the joy away from it. It's kind
Yeah.
of the same when you're too much into the video games.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you see the behind the screens, and it's really like walking in the back lot at Disney and you realize, oh, that's just an image. That's just a facade, right?
Yeah.
It's there's a lot of that. But yeah, I love working with creative people, and the people in the computer games industries are among the most creative people in the world today.
You
They
have a
have
couple.
to be.
You have a couple favorite video games you've played in your
I'm
past?
an MMO guy
Okay.
mostly. EverQuest was
Oh,
my
yeah.
love for years. In fact, I still play every now and then. I'll go back and play the original EverQuest.
Yeah.
You can still get one. There's one site that runs it, like through the first 2 expansions,
Yeah. Yeah.
or it just kind of got out of hand. And I still play WoW now and then. Other than that, I want to go back and play Kingdoms of Amalur as soon as I set it up again, because that game, I really was proud of that.
Yeah. I was gonna say you had a hand in making that, didn't you?
Oh, I created the world. And
Yeah.
then I helped them put their engine and their storyline into our world. And then I helped them edit the stories. So yeah, I had a big hand in that. I didn't write it, but I had a big hand in it. And I loved working with those folks. I still keep in touch with some of them. It's great. I have lifelong friends from my days at 38 Studios.
Nice. Nice.
And most of them are bigwigs at other computer game companies now, which is kind of cool.
You have a favorite class you play in World of Warcraft?
I always have a favorite class that's different every week, which is why I
Okay.
have 4 level 70 characters waiting for the next expansion.
Nice.
I like the warlock. I use my warlock for soloing because they're so overpowered. It's insane. I use my paladin as my gatherer for herbs and mining because a paladin, you can't kill them.
Yeah.
They're boring. It's a protection paladin. You can't kill them. I'll stay alive. You're not going to kill me. But 3 hours later, before I kill you, but I will. Um, I have a holy priest. I love being the healing guy in the parties. And I have a fury warrior, which this is the first time I played a warrior, and I play them as a fury warrior. And it's like when you get the right equipment, that is just disgusting. You kill things faster than mages. It's crazy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I have lots of
Massive
fun.
DPS.
Yeah, my favorite in EverQuest was always the monk. I love the monk.
I
in
love the monk
EverQuest.
as well. I know. I had a water paladin, the Kanara water paladin. Everybody thought I was crazy, and I was. But some of the some of the unique stuff for that, nobody else played it. So yeah, I totally get you on that. The monk was great. And you running the
In D&D, I always played monks, but I'm playing a blade singer right now, and I'm having a blast. I'm not the strongest character, but I'm having a blast.
what edition are you guys running?
5e.
5e. How do you
Yeah,
like the change
we were
to
playing
5e?
Demon Wars,
Okay.
which is a game I kickstarted.
Yeah.
That my son, who's a high-powered game designer at a company, but I won't mention because he gets mad if I tell everything where he works.
Okay.
But he, after 38 Studios collapsed, came back and he was working on some of his own games. And I said, hey, I've always wanted to do a Demon Wars game. And he designed a tabletop RPG for Demon Wars. My other son, who was a narrative designer, Gino, who I've written books with, did a lot of the writing on it. We did a Kickstarter on it, successful Kickstarter, sold thousands of them. And we played that for 6 years. It's got active defense. It's got talent trees, so you build your characters the way you want. We had a blast with that game. But then I realized, I got to learn 5e because I'm still kind of working in that world.
Yeah.
So we started playing 5e, and I was pleasantly surprised because I really like it.
Nice.
If you have a good DM, 5e is an amazing game.
Do you find an issue with when you're writing to try and match kind of what the mechanics are in a game with
no.
your stories?
No, I have to stay within the boundaries that they set up in the game because
Mhm.
it is for the Forgotten Realms world. But the only time I ever did that was in one of the Neverwinter books where I had the Ephron, who's kind of a necromancer type character, did a 4e anatomically correct battle scene in the forest, and it almost killed me. I hated doing it. It came out pretty good, but I don't do that. No.
Yeah, I understand that. So when you are coming up with like stuff like magical items and things like that, how do you try and keep that in your mind when you're saying I'm writing for, I'm still writing for a D&D audience? Do you pull out a book and go, okay, this is kind of what these kind of items can do, or do you come up with it and let them deal with it?
Well, a lot of the items, I mean, I try not to lock them in because when the new edition comes out, they'll be different, right?
Right.
Like Twinkle, Drit's scimitar, which is now a blend of 2 different scimitars because of the Great Forge, was initially like a +4 defender.
Mm-hmm.
But they really kind of got rid of that as the editions went on. Then they kind of brought it back, but not really. I guess it's back now. The +3 defender is back in 5e, I think. But it's, you understand the flavor of the magic and you understand the boundaries of the magic. And then you just kind of play within those. And it's worked pretty well.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely does. I mean, I don't hear anyone complaining. You're still writing, right?
Oh, I'm sure somebody's complaining. Somebody's always complaining. Usually me, but
when you're building a world with all these different characters, do you know in your head that these are, when you came up with the first book and or the early books and you were introducing, say, like Artemis and Draxel, did you know that they were going to be a main characters for the overall story down the road, or was that just something that developed as the fans acknowledged what was going on?
Dritz wasn't in my initial sample chapter and outline that I sent to was TSR when I was auditioning to do the second Forgotten Realms book. He came in as an afterthought, as a sidekick to Wolfgar, who was supposed to be the hero. And Artemis and Treri came in literally in the last chapter or epilogue, whatever it was, of the Crystal Shard, because I was trying to put a couple of hooks in the book in case they wanted me to do a second book.
Okay.
And I fully expected the second book would be him and Dritz in the final showdown where he would die. And for some reason, he just kept kind of tugging at my heartstrings or something.
Yeah.
And so he just stuck around.
'Cause
And Jalaxo was a lark. He was my walking Deus Ex Machina.
Yeah.
He was only in there with his Batman utility belt for easy solutions because I was just kind of making fun of. I was making fun of the movies where in the last scene the dragon's going to destroy the whole city and the guy falls into the pile of treasure because the dragon throws him aside and he falls in. He picks up a sword. The sword has that dragon's name on it. And he stabs it and the dragon dies. Right.
Right.
That kind of Deus Ex Machina moment or ending. Jalaxo was kind of like my joke for all of that. And then finally, like when Cell Swords came out, he was going to be a featured character. And I was thrilled until I realized I only had 4 months to write the book and I had no idea what he had for equipment.
Yeah.
Because it had just been one cameo after another. So I went on a message board anonymously. True.
Okay.
This was back before social media.
Right.
And before like the Forgotten Realms wiki and stuff.
Yeah, like
this
a
was
GeoCities forum or something.
Yeah, it was before all of that. I went in probably AOL message board or something anonymously. And I said, hey guys, let's do an inventory of Jalaxo's cool items. And 3 days later, I downloaded like a 10-page thread where people were like giving the page numbers in the books where he had this and that. And someone else said, oh no, he lost that here. And so I was looking it all up. I'm like, these guys are good.
That was my research. The fans to tell you what's going on.
Yeah, that was my research for the books. Well, gotta remember something. People come up to me and they talk about like Streams of Silver, right? They'll come up and say, when you did this in Streams of Silver, and it'll be some minor scene, minor character off to the side. I wrote the book in 1988.
Right.
I mean, I don't have that memory.
Right. I don't remember what I did yesterday.
I love all these movies that show writers talking to their editors, like writers and editors ever actually sit down together, right?
Right.
And they romanticize the whole thing where he starts quoting like these long passages. A guy goes on a date with a woman, he quotes some obscure passage from some writer, and she'll come back with the same thing. Oh, and they'll go on and on and on. It's like, yeah, who does that? Who remembers that stuff, right? You remember the first 2 lines of a poem, and that's about it for most people.
So what you're saying is you're going to come out with a new movie where you tell it how it is? Is that your next pitch?
God, no. We have to keep the romance going. People can't think of us as sitting in a hole drinking bourbon. We can't let people think that's who we really are.
Well, I mean,
we're brilliant people who go out there and solve the world's problems every time we sit down for lunch. Don't you know that?
You mentioned earlier writing and working with your kids. How is that for you? Is that like
awesome.
exciting?
Oh, it is. It's awesome because when I'm working with Brian on technical aspects of a game, he's so far above me that I learn. And when I work with Gino on a book and stuff, our styles are very, very different. But we come together in this kind of weird way. It took us a while to figure out how we were going to make it work, but he's my son. We had to make it work. We were doing it.
Right.
And I don't do a lot of cooperative books. The only other one I've done was with a dear friend of ours, Erica Eli Lewis. We did a book called The Color of Dragons, a young adult book that came out late last year. It was a young adult book, and I really don't know that genre. It's different than fantasy.
Yeah.
Adult fantasy.
Yeah.
But she knows that genre. And so when it was actually Temple Hill came to us and asked us to do it, the movie studio. I don't know if they're ever going to make a movie, but I hope so. I said, that's really out of my area. You sure you don't want to do The Highwayman? That would make a great movie, right? My Demon Wars book. But they said, no, we really have this kind of basic idea. And they gave us the basic idea and we went, nah. Then we changed it. We made our own. Oh. But working with Erica was a pleasure too. So I've only done it a couple of times with Gino and once with Erica. And then I worked on the game with Brian. But so far, so good.
Did they read your stuff growing up?
Yeah. Yeah. My boys did. My daughter really didn't.
Yeah.
My wife is selective. She likes like the Coven series and the Demon War books, the Clara Quintet. She's very selective with you. I don't really want her reading my books because I really don't need to hear it. But my boys did. Absolutely. Now my grandkids are. My oldest grandson's
Okay.
reading all my books, but he's one of those people. He'll get on an airplane with an omnibus and he'll be done by the time the plane lands.
Wow.
And I'm talking a shuttle in New York. This kid can read.
That's
No,
great.
yeah, this kid, he's a fabulous reader, and he's diving through them right now.
Would they come up to you with books that you hadn't heard of and be like, "Oh, Dad, you need to really read this. You need to look at that." And are you like, "Oh, gosh,
They know better.
they know better"?
They know better. They can suggest books now and then, but they know better. Most of my reading isn't in the genre, honestly.
Yeah.
That's too hard because I'll be stealing ideas from other people. And I know who I like in the genre and I read their books. Like,
Yeah.
and it's usually for a blurb, like Aaron Evans. I'm reading a book by Aaron Evans right now that is, as usual, fantastic.
Yeah. Her stuff
So
is great.
I'm just loving this book, and it's just, or like Terry Brooks, when he has a new book out, I'll get it before it even comes out, before it even comes off his computer, right? So I'll read
Yeah.
that. But I don't read that much in the genre anymore because I'm trying to keep, first of all, if you're going to be a writer, and I write a lot of stories that involve politics and culture and trade and how the systems work, you have to
Right.
keep up on what's going on in the world. So I'll read a
Yeah.
lot of books about current events, things that are going on. I read a lot of books about like geography or archaeology or anthropology, or just and history. I love the history books as well, because when I create a new culture in the world, I'm not just making something up out of the blue. Oh, and I think they'll eat marbles. Yeah, they'll eat marbles, and they'll blow them out their ear and shoot people with them. And you can't do things like that.
Right.
Your cultures have to rhyme with cultures that people are familiar with. So you really should understand the way things work. Like if I'm trying to write a book and I want a pre-Renaissance feel, I'm going to go read books about Italy in the 1400s.
Yeah.
Right. Like when I was doing the Cleric Quintet, I took a course in Chaucer because I
wow.
really wanted that when people are beginning to question.
Yeah.
Right. In the Cleric Quintet. And Chaucer's right at that spot.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, that's the way I do it.
And it kind of shows in your newest series, because you can see a lot of that. There's some political stuff in there going on, and a little bit of intrigue, and you get the trades and how this one decision is going to affect everything.
Right.
And we can see that, and that's all what you're saying is coming from you doing that kind of work. So that sounds like a lot of work.
The newest two series I've worked on with Dritz, the Generations trilogy and now the Way of the Drow, and the Coven books that I did in my Demon Wars, all are three very different things. The Generations trilogy was the personal journey and what's going on. There was some catalysts that were being put in there that would have lasting effects. But the newer series is, again, I mean, the book Starlight Enclave had been planned for many, many years, that I would one day write a story about Drow that were not under the influence of the Spider Queen.
Right.
And so I put them in a place where if you live in a place like this, it has to be more cooperative. You can't be hoarding things because there's nothing to hoard. If you're hoarding the food, the starving people will kill you. Okay?
Yeah.
So I didn't, no influence of Loth. They're in a place where it's like a literally clean slate every year. You don't know what's going to happen. And because there's new snow falling. So it's literally a clean slate. And so the relationships they have with the other races of humanoids around them, whether it's the orcs or the dwarfs or whatever, are different.
Yeah.
And their own setup is away from the influences of the kings and queens and demon queens and gods of the realms. So what you have is essentially a liberal democracy. But I had to make it different. So I have to come up with ways to solve the same problems that we solve in other ways.
Right.
Right? Like the clothing, it's really cold. The lack of like food to support a city of that size.
Yeah.
And if you're just going to conjure bread, the clerics are just going to conjure bread and water, that'd be boring. You'd leave just because the food was terrible, right?
Yeah.
You'd get on the next plane to something like El Paso or Chicago with this real food.
Get something with some flavor in it.
Yeah. So they've come up with ways to get around that through magic and technique, I guess you can call it, not so much technology. and create the things they need and the system that works for them. So to me, writing Starlight Enclave was really like writing Homeland all over again in a
Yeah.
lot of ways, except in Homeland, which is based more on the five families of New York. You
Okay.
have people in a hole in the ground. If they try to leave through one of the caves, everything out there wants to eat them. They'll almost certainly die. They get no information except what their evil Spider Queen goddess tells them. Complete propaganda world. And the zealots are people who are taking advantage of that. So they're more than happy to be her, her zealot priestesses
Right.
that can maintain their power at the expense of everybody else. And that's a society that was just corrupted from like day 5 through day 3,000,005 or whatever it is, right?
Yeah.
And then when I come to the surface, however, without that Spider Queen influence on this other drow culture that I was able to create, I got to play around with the same basic mentality of this race, who they live a long time. They have a different way of looking at the world, like the elves do, like the dwarves do in their own way, And so I get to do it all over again. And I went back again, I said The Godfather for that one. This one was more like 14th century Florence,
Okay.
where I really went back and studied and looked at some of the things they did and why they did them. And then tried to come up with, well, what would they need to do in this new place to be ready when bad things happened in this place?
Yeah.
And created things like Cascalchi, the blood sport, and things like that. And that's my favorite part of being a writer.
When you're writing these things, do you have an issue ever where, they come to you, say Wizards of the Coast, or whoever you're working for comes back and says, yeah, we can't have this, we have something else? Or are you to the point where they just give you carte blanche for your
they don't mess with me much. Okay. They don't mess with me much. They really don't. They have, even though I'm working with Harper Voyager now, Wizards does get in it on the books. They get to approve or say no to covers, to the what's in the books. And it's really, they know I'm a team player. They know I understand the realms at this point as well as anyone up there.
Yeah.
Right. The only person I can think of who probably knows the realms better than I do, right? Well, no, there's plenty, but they're all from old TSI. None of them work at Wizards.
Yeah.
But Ed Greenwood, right?
Right.
I mean, the people at Wizards right now, they know I know what I'm doing. They know I understand their game. They know I understand the messages they want for the realms, the tone, the magic system, and things like that. And they know I'm a team player. Yeah. So if I went to them and they said, we really want to change this, I'd say, okay, how do you want to change it? And then we'd find a way that we could all be happy.
Okay.
But there's very little of that. There's very little of that. We get along really well.
That's great.
Yeah. My only complaint was that a lot of people never got to read this book, honestly. Starlight Enclave, I mean.
Yeah.
Because months before it came out, there was a big, we're changing the drow websites and everything else. And I was like, couldn't you just wait till they just read the book?
Right.
Because the book is just a logical extension of my story. But, that was above my pay grade.
Yeah. Well, it is. I mean, I like the way that it is part of the story. Like, you can see it developing and how it's developing as far as what you're talking about there in the book.
Yeah. So, I mean, like I said, this book has been planned for a long time. Not the particulars of the world that I created, because that I did while I was writing it.
Right.
But the idea of what I was going to do in this book is 12 years old, at least.
Yeah. And what better time than now for this story to come out, right?
Yeah. Yeah. In one way, yes. In another way, no. In one way, yes, because it really is topical.
Yeah.
And in another way, no, because people have made up their minds about things in a lot of ways. And so they're seeing things through an agenda prism, as opposed to me just telling the logical extension of a story that I've been telling that has been consistent since 1987.
Right. It's not like you're changing everything all overnight.
But that's what I mean when I say I wish people had come to the book organically.
Yeah.
People reading Dritz without knowing that, is there an agenda here? Because there wasn't. It's consistent. Go back and read Dark Mirror in the mid-90s, the story I wrote about Dritz finding a goblin who was a slave.
Yeah.
And realizing this is not an evil goblin.
Yeah.
But what about the people who were enslaving him?
Right.
And wait a minute, this isn't an evil goblin? I thought all goblins were evil.
Right.
I'm a ranger. I'm supposed to kill all goblins. What does this mean?
Well, it's growth
Right?
of character, and I love it. I love it.
Yeah, but that story is probably one of my favorite Dritz pieces that I've ever done, and it really just made him go, "What the hell?"
Yeah.
Because the Dritz books from the very beginning have been about ethics and individual agency. That's what they're about. That's the story of Dritz
Yeah.
and his friends.
When you're going through these books and you have things like cover art and audiobooks and things like that, do you have a lot of hand in the artist or the narration or any of that kind of stuff? Or is it just like,
No,
this is what we're giving you, deal with it?
no, you get what they give you. It's I've been really lucky. I mean, look, my first cover was Larry Elmore,
Right.
right? My name was this big on the book, and Forgotten Realms was this big, and that's why it went out in big numbers.
Right.
I don't hold any illusions about that. And that Larry Elmore cover was just brilliant.
Right.
I did get to get Keith Parkinson once before he passed on. I wanted to work with Keith. I love his work. That's a painting. That's a Keith painting right
Yeah.
there. He did it.
Yeah.
The only one he did for one of my books was from Mortalis, which is my favorite book to this day. Is the fourth book of my Demon Wars series, and Keith did the cover for that. And I had some input in that. But it depends on the publisher. It depends what kind of mood they're in.
Right.
It depends what other things they have to tie it to. Like Wizards, I think, would have a harder time giving me the kind of latitude on things like covers than, say, I'm doing my new Demon War series with Saga. My new Demon War series, it's up to me. If I say I really want pirates on the cover, they'll give me they'll listen.
Right.
Unless they find an artist who does something that's just out of this world, and then they'll try and get me to do that. But Wizards has to be more careful than that because the images that go out cross platforms.
Right.
So if I've got Dritz looking this way or doing this, and then Cryptic does something different, or you know what I mean?
Yeah.
They have more that they have to worry about because it's so multi-platformed at this point in time. Than the books I'm just doing on my own in my own series.
What about audiobooks?
Love them.
Victor Bavine is your main narrator.
Again, I've been incredibly fortunate. Victor Bavine doing my books for Dritz. He's the voice of Dritz. It's on this business card, and it's true. And I have Tim Garrad Reynolds doing my Demon Wars books, and that's pretty spectacular too, because he's got just the right accent and background to do them.
Yeah. Do you listen to audiobooks yourself?
Sometimes, not. I find that when I listen to them, I get distracted, and then I have to try and figure out where I stopped listening to them. Some people, love them, and some people it's just hard. I think if I was commuting or something where I don't commute, I walk up the stairs.
Yeah.
If I was commuting, I think I'd really be into audiobooks, but it's hard around here because it's almost around here. I'm almost ADHD,
Yeah.
Let's go on pool. Okay, I got to get downstairs and do some weights. Okay, great. We're going for a walk. Yep. Oh, the kids are coming over. Great. They're bringing their grandkids. Yeah. Oh, hi, everything. It's that's my life. It's crazy. So audiobooks would have a hard time with me.
Yeah. Well.
Yeah. But I also want to say that Graphic Audio did the original Demon Wars books and the Highwayman. They did those books. They call it a movie in your mind. They hire actors and they do this theatrical presentation.
Yeah.
And they just re-released. They've been gone for a long time. They just re-released the 7 original Demon War books. They remastered them and re-released them, and those are fabulous.
Nice.
They just, I mean, it's different than listening to the straight read because they're bridged.
Yeah.
But they're really fun. They do a fantastic
But it's
job.
it's like a theater in your mind. I've listened to a few of those. I primarily listen to audiobooks if I can. I'll listen to an audiobook over reading because I have the time. I'm out there a lot, so it's like being out in the vehicle or driving or doing stuff. I can listen to it.
Yep.
Whereas I have to sit still for a half a minute, to open a book and read it. So it's just great to hear it. And those theater in the mind ones, those really can catch your attention and really get you pulled into the story even more.
Well, it's like something like 117 hours of Demon Wars. Theater in your mind.
Great. Looking forward to it.
Yeah, they're really great. They did a fantastic. That was one of the early series they did too.
Yeah.
This was back when you had to buy like 10 discs.
Yeah.
Now you just
Or
log in and
cassettes maybe a couple of
no,
them.
they were no, they were discs.
Were
They
they
weren't
discs?
cassettes.
Okay.
They weren't that far back. The only books I have on cassette that I know of, I think Vector Prime was Vector Prime was a CD. The Star Wars book I did. I think my first Demon Wars book, and I think the Legacy, they did an audio book, and they were cassettes. And Billy Mooney, the original Will Robinson of Lost in Space, did one of them.
Nice.
And that was kind of cool. And one of my favorite old fantasy movies is Dragon Slayer. Remember Dragon Slayer?
Yeah.
And Peter McNichol did Galen Bradwarden did I think the Legacy. So that was really cool. Nice. And then of course I had this experience a few years ago when they were doing the anthology, the collected stories of the Legend of Drizzt.
Yeah.
I didn't know they were doing it. That Audible was doing it. And my wife came in from the back room and she's like, Bob, does this look familiar to you? And she gave me it was Ice-T's blog. And he was complaining. He went in to read a book and they gave him this Dungeons and Dragons book and he couldn't pronounce anything. And they have talking swords and flying horses. And he's going on and on and on. And I'm like, holy crap, that's my story. So I called Wizards and they were trying to make it a surprise to me, but they got like Will Wheaton and Melissa Roche and David Duchovny and Ice-T and Weird Al and all these other celebrities and stars to do each of the stories. Felicia Day did a couple, did one or two. Sean Astin did one, right?
Yeah.
And they was going to surprise me, but then I had only those surreal days. I had to go get my TSA known traveler background check in Boston.
Yeah.
So we're in Boston. We went to the airport and did that. And then we were walking over to Fenway Park to watch the Red Sox. And I was on the phone on Ice-T's podcast. And the first thing he asked me, he goes, don't tell me you can pronounce these names. He didn't say these names. I'm not going to swear on your show. And I said, of course not. He goes, I love you. He's the best. I adore him. We hooked up on Twitter a little bit. I PM him now and then. He'll PM me now. I love this man. He is a bad dude, but he's a great dude.
That's great. That's a great story.
Yeah. There's perks to this business, after all.
Yeah, for sure. You mentioned your Star Wars book that you did. How was that? Were you a fan of Star Wars before then?
I was a fan of the movies.
Yeah.
The only thing that was out when I did them was the original trilogy.
Right.
I was 17 when I 17 or 18 when I watched A New Hope, and then that Star Destroyer came over the screen. That was it, because we had to sit right in the front row, so it was like it was coming right over us, and that was like, I was like, wow, they finally did something. Like, this is amazing.
Right.
It's going to change the world. It did.
Yeah.
But I wasn't into like the expanded universe and all of that. I mean, I know Tim a little bit. I was friends with Mike Stackpole, so I knew they were doing them. I knew the books. But when Del Rey got the rights, they asked me. I was one of their new authors. They were trying to promote. They asked me to do the first book in the New Jedi Order, and I said, really, because I know the movies, but expanded universe kind of got away from me there. I can't keep up with that when I'm trying to keep up with the realms. And they said, it's okay, Mike Stackpole will help you. And he did. Mike was a great help. And they sent me like the Star Wars encyclopedia. And I had all the resources at my fingertips. They told me what they were trying to accomplish in this like 20-book series or whatever it turned out to be. And they wanted me to go like from A to B. And they said, we need a Pyrrhic victory. This is a new enemy we're trying to develop. And so I took the Yuuzhan Vong and I did all these strange things with them and kind of brought it to the next one. And I had the outline. I sent it in and they said, this is great. This is exactly what we want. But didn't anyone tell you? I said, what? They said, you got to kill Chewie. I'm like, F you. Where do I send the check back? And we had this big, long fight. And this was in August. And they needed the book by like October. So it's not like I had months and months to write the book.
Wow.
And but then, they convinced me they were doing it for the right reasons. And I'm still not sure that's true.
Yeah.
Kind of regret doing it, not just because I got incredible backlash, but just because I don't like hurting people.
I know friends that said that they threw the book after when they read that. They're like, I
think that really hurts some people. But I meet people all the time who said that's what it needed. That reignited my love of Star Wars. And I know other people that said, I slept with a Chewie doll and I'm going to find out where you live, you bastard.
That reminds me in role playing where you tell, the player should know that they can die. The GM's not going to let you live forever. You can die. You like, and so I think that that's also that that a person should know that maybe a character can die, and that brings intrigue because you don't know what's going to happen next. So
A surreal moment in my life. I was at Star Wars Celebration 2 in Indian, I think it was 2 in Indianapolis, signing Vector Prime, and it's swarms of people in this convention hall, right?
right,
And I was like right in the middle of the hall. I wasn't in one of the side rooms. So there's like thousands of people all around, walking around in the outfits. The 501st was there with their stormtroopers and everything. And all of a sudden I hear this noise and I look up and the crowd is parting and there's this 7'6" giant walking toward me.
oh no,
It was Peter Mayhew.
yeah,
And he came around the table and he like dropped his hands on my shoulder. And I had a picture on my Facebook page. I look like I'm about 8 years old next to him. His hands are like this big, right? And he's kind of choking me. And he goes, "We got to talk." And then later we talked. He wanted me to sign one of the books for his kid, He's just, I miss him. I only saw him at conventions, and I feel like I lost one of my best friends when he passed, because he's one of the most gracious human beings I've ever met in my life. We'd be walking through and he'd see me and Diane. He'd be like, "Hey, Diane, get him, get over here." He's got this long line. He's interrupting it so we can go over and say hi to Peter. Just a wonderful man. And I killed him.
Yeah, he killed him off.
But Disney rescued him, and he's a Disney princess now.
Yeah.
So they won't have it on my gravestone, and everything's cool.
Yeah, they're just going to wipe the slate clean and pretend that Disney saved you. Is that what you're saying? Disney saved you?
My name is Bobby. My last name might be Ewing. It might have been a shower scene. I'm talking. I'm old enough to get that joke. Seems like you.
I get the joke. I do.
No one listening does.
We have some people in here that might get the joke. Some in the live stream.
Some geezers. Is that what you're saying?
Did you did somebody in chat? Yay, Dallas joke. Did you? So your bio says that you were influenced by Tolkien, and that was kind of your stepping stone for going into things.
Tolkien changed my life.
Were there other books as well? Other fantasy books that
when
really
I say
stood
I was
out to you?
influenced by Tolkien, here's how. Okay, when I was very young, I was reading way before kindergarten, because I have 5 older sisters, so I had 6 mothers. That's where I came up with the drow, by the way.
Oh, okay.
My sisters would always say, "Can I be Vienna?" "No, you're not Vienna. You're Breeza." And so I had to deal with my mother because school was really boring. And she would let me bag school as long as I was getting A's. She didn't care. And so I would stay home and I would read my Charlie Brown books. You can't see them here, but if you go past the softball trophies to that back bookcase, I have this huge collection of first edition Peanuts books from the early 60s.
Wow.
I was a Charlie Brown fanatic. I love Charlie Brown. And the older I get, the more I think Charles Schultz was right about so much.
Right.
I just love those books. So I would stay home and read. And I also have my comics. I had Fantastic Four was a big favorite of mine. And so I read all the time, and I would write, I would create. I loved it. And then through the years, school kind of beat the love of that out of me. Now, I remember being in like the 8th grade, and they gave me, you're going to read these wonderful books. And they gave me Silas Marner and Ethan Frome. And it's like, what the hell do I care about any of this?
Right.
And they gave me like Moby Dick to read. And I got to tell you, if you took 72 chapters out of Moby Dick, it'd be a hell of a short story.
Right. Yeah, for sure.
For an 8th grader, I mean, look, I'm not trying to knock those books.
Yeah.
If I went back and read Ethan Frome or Silas Marner now, if I could get past my initial
right,
I'd probably see why the teacher thought they were really great.
Right.
But as an 8th grade boy, just trying to figure out the world and trying to figure out girls and trying to figure out sports and just trying to survive in a horrible junior high school.
Yeah.
Those books meant nothing to me. And so I stopped reading except what I had to read. And I stopped writing except what I had to write to keep my grades up.
Yeah.
And I went to college, and I didn't even know what I was going to do. I went undeclared, but I was really a math science major. I was thinking physics. I'd done really, really well on my SATs in math and physics. I did okay in the English part, but really excelled in that. So I figured that, I'd find something to do with either math or science, because I love math and science.
Yeah.
Particularly science. But I was commuting. I was working 2 or 3 jobs to pay for it. I was taking care of my parents who were aging. I was a bouncer. in a local nightclub. I worked in factories, whatever, just to get through that school.
Yeah.
But I wasn't thinking much about it. And then my freshman year, my sister for Christmas gave me a copy of The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings. And I was like, what is this? And she goes, oh, it's about a hobbit. It's like a little person. I said, a little person. She goes, yeah, it's like a dwarf, but they have hairy feet. I'm like, oh, all right. And she goes, no, no, no. And she's trying to tell me what it's about. And I'm laughing at her. And she said, just read them. So I went in my room and I was mad because I needed money to fix my car. I had this 69 Mercury Cougar that I had to fix every other day. I loved it, but it broke down all the time. And so I just threw the books in the corner. I didn't think anything of it. A couple months later, we had the great blizzard of '78 up here in New England. And it happened, it came in on a Tuesday, Monday night and Tuesday morning. And they said we might get a couple of inches of snow. And we got like feet of snow, but the wind was whipping and the cars were trapped on the highway and you had 6-foot snow drifts everywhere.
Wow.
Everything was shut down for the rest of the week, including college. There's no way I could get there. Right. They didn't have the kind of plowing equipment they have now. No car had 4-wheel drive. Nobody had, we had rear-wheel drive. I mean, you weren't going to go anywhere.
Yeah, you'd be making circles if you get
up. So here
there.
I am, 19 years old and trapped in my mother's house. Oh, joy. So I said, oh, what the hell? And I pulled out The Hobbit. And I opened the book, and it was early in the morning, and the sun's coming up. I'm trying to see what the weather's going to be like. We're going to get more snow. And I got Fleetwood Mac playing. The Fleetwood Mac Rumors is playing on my stereo.
Good
the
call.
album spinning around. And I read, in the hole in the ground there lived a hobbit. And I went, oh, what the hell is this? And I think I read those books. I'm a very, very slow reader. I think I read those books like 3 times before I went back to school. And I remembered what it was like with Charlie Brown under the covers of my bed, reading about Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
And it was magical. And I kept thinking, why didn't they give me The Hobbit to read in the 8th grade? Why the hell, Silas Marner? Give me this book and get out of my way. You'll never have to try to teach me how to read. I promise. And so, yeah, Tolkien did it for me. He brought me right back into that. And I changed my major to communications media because then all of my courses, my electives could become literature courses because I was going for technical writing.
Right.
Where you're an English major who has to understand what engineers are saying and make it so that non-engineers can understand it. And I could do that.
Yeah.
So that's what I was doing. And so now I'm reading, within a year, I'm reading Chaucer in Middle English and laughing at all the right parts. I'm reading Shakespeare again and I'm getting it. I'm understanding why they think it's important. I'm reading the Romantics, Wordsworth and Kelly and Shelley and Keats. And I'm like, this is really wonderful. They're talking about ordinary people instead of kings. This is amazing. And so it changed my whole life.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that like Tolkien-esque fantasy, I guess, is the groundwork for most of modern fantasy. It was picked up by Brooks and Donaldson. And but if I had to look at authors that had direct impact on the way I like to write, I think Fritz Leiber is one of the, I mean, Fafhrd and Grey Mouser, I love buddy fantasy.
You have no idea how many authors, I had a little bit of knowledge until I started the show. And so many authors say the same thing as you. That story, those characters.
Fafhrd and Grey Mouser?
Yeah. Yeah, so many. And I'm like,
those novellas are magical.
Yeah.
When they raid the caravan on the streets and they're going to split it in 60-60. Sure. It just the little lines in there. And I mean, that's where I came up with Dritz, right? You got Wolfgar, Fafhrd, and Mouser. Yeah. That still worked. Buddy fantasy, right? Yeah. And they just expanded on that whole concept. So I think he had a big influence on me. I think Roger Zelazny. When I sat down to do the Dark Elf trilogy, I was thinking I would do it. Let me shut this phone off before it starts binging. Sorry about that. I was thinking I'd do the Dark Elf trilogy in first person because I read Amber, and Amber is wonderful, just amazing stuff. And first person is really hard to write, but he's a baby when it's that. You can't really do first person.
Yeah.
And then I love writing big battle scenes with lots of things going on in different places. And if you're in a fight, the only thing that matters is what's right in front of you and maybe coming in from the side. You're not looking at Bruner fighting an orc over there while you're battling a Yeti right here, right? That's not how it works. And that's where I came up with the Dritz essays. so that I could get in his mind a little bit. I could do a little Zelazny-like work and do things from the perspective completely from the character's point of view.
Right.
And that became the essays. And
Okay.
then I think Michael Moorcock might have had some influence on me. Terry Brooks certainly, and told it. Yeah. But I think Charles Schultz had a lot of an effect on the way I write because, like I said, my books are about ethics and individual agency, and so is Peanuts.
Definitely. As a person from the hometown of Schultz, I agree.
Are you really?
Yeah, I'm from St. Paul. Yep.
That's so cool.
We have little peanut statues all over the place here. Let's we're running a little long on time, but I want to talk about. We talked a little bit about Glacier's Edge. We chatted about that. You mentioned Color of Dragons, which is out now.
Yep.
And that's more of a young adult book, right?
It's a young adult book about the beginning of magic in pre-Author R.A. in England.
Nice.
Yeah.
And you're writing that with another author,
Erica Eli Lewis.
Nice.
Who's got a whole new middle grade series coming out. It's really fantastic.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll
Kelsey Murphy. Look for Kelsey Murphy. Good stuff.
Well, maybe I'll send them a message and have them on the show. And now on September 20th, you have the Tao of Drizzt.
Yeah.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Well, this has been going on for many, many years where people have been asking for all of the Drizzt essays in one place.
Right.
And Watsy was resistant. I was kind of resistant because, whether we're going to do book 2 in 5 years or whatever. And I just figured that now it really was the time for it.
Yeah.
Given the content of the new books, the things that are going on, where I am in my career, where we are with the Drizzt story, I just thought it was the right time to do it. So we're taking all the Drizzt essays from Homeland all the way to the book I haven't even done it yet. Some of the essays in there. I had to write the essays before I write the books. And we put them together in the journal, kind of a really high quality journal of Dritztward. And it's called the Tao of Drizzt. It's coming out in September, and now's the time for it. And we're getting a ton of pre-orders on it. I think people are very excited about it. I'm very excited about it. I was talking to Victor Bavine, you mentioned him, and he says, boy, reading the Drizzt essays one after the other, as opposed to the beginning of each section of the book, is just a different experience. I'm really loving it. So
they kind of tell their own story, right?
Yeah. Yeah, they tell their own story. You see the development of Drizzt in different ways.
Yeah.
More clearly. So it was a fascinating thing to do. And so, I worked on that. Now I'm working on the 3rd book in the Way of the Drow. I don't know if they've announced the name yet, so I'm not gonna.
So don't announce it. Yeah.
I'm not gonna break it.
I don't want to have to edit it out if you do.
It's got an absolutely perfect name for the series.
Excellent.
I'm working on that, and now it's the Civil War in Menzoberranzan that's been brewing for a few books.
Yeah.
Between the Lothians and the ones who created the heresy.
Yeah.
Against Loth. And I'm also working on the books that follow the Coven, which is a series I just adored writing. Got way bigger than I thought it would get, and it was a pleasure to write. And now it left the world in such a state that I could really try my hand at rhyming with a different part of history and make it make sense. Yeah. And so the new books are pirate centered. And
you had me at pirate.
I wrote the first book, and as I was writing it, it seemed a little off to me because I was trying to tie this story with this story and then bring them together at the end. Then I realized, this is 2 books, and I can bring them together at the end of the 2nd book. So I put the onshore story off, and I just focused on the pirates, the crew of that pirate ship. And I don't think I've ever had more fun writing a book. My wife she's telling everyone, he'd come down the stairs every day giggling. And that's what it was true. I was doing that. I don't think I've giggled like that writing a book in a long time, but just the battle scenes. I just had so much fun with the pirate ships, and the research was wonderful. Getting to really get out there and do some boating and see some ships and learn the terms and figure out what the hell was going on with these pirates, and watching the documentaries on the pirate kingdoms. And like there's one on Disney called Drain the Pirate City, where they talk about what was it, Port Royal outside of Kingston, Jamaica, when it just sank, like in hours. The whole city just sank.
Oh wow.
And what they do in the Drain the documentaries, they did one with the Titanic. What they do is they just pretend that they've drained all the water away from it, and this is what is left. And they do it by imaging. and they're really fantastic. And so the research was a blast. I watched Black Sails again, beginning to end.
Right? That's a great one.
It's just such a fun show, really is the fight scenes in that, just the way you feel like you're sweating when you watch that show.
And the little touches it has to some like other novels and characters that are out there.
Yeah, yeah, and then reading like the Republic of Pirates and On Stranger Tides, reading these Billy Budd, right? Reading these fantastic pirate books to get ready for the series was so much fun. Then writing it was more fun than I thought it would be. It was just a giggle a day, really.
That's awesome.
So I'm still going with Demon Wars, still going with Drifts, and I'm trying to have as much fun as I can before the conventions kill me.
Yeah, well, hopefully the conventions don't kill you, and I'm excited for the books, all of them, especially the ones that like you're just talking about. Like the more you sound excited about something, the more I get excited. And I'm sure the more the listeners get excited because they understand passion, and when they feel it and they hear it from even just you, that makes them more excited for
Yeah,
it.
but if it wasn't there, you wouldn't still be working in this business, right?
Right.
If you don't have that, you got nothing in this
Right.
business, because this business will kill you. It's getting dark here.
Yeah, that's all right.
We can dark earlier now. Jeez. This business will kill you. So if you don't have that passion anymore, that's like when people say, "What's your favorite book?" I always want to say the one I'm working on.
Right.
But this one is one of the most fun books I've ever done. And now I'm doing a Civil War in Menzel Baron's on, so there's a little bit of action.
Yeah, definitely. You're going to be on some shows coming up. We talked about it earlier. You're going to be on, and this was told to me, so this may be a surprise to you on some of these. Dragon Talk podcast, Fantasy Grounds podcast, Functional Nerds, Upper Pen, Dungeon Crawlers, and Author Stories is the list I was given for future podcasts you're going to be on here coming up.
There are probably more, but
there's probably more.
I tell them, look, all right, I'll do it. Call me on the morning of, because
let me know.
Yeah.
Looks like there's going to be a Reddit AMA in the /fantasy, r/fantasy on August 11th.
Oh, there is, isn't there?
Yeah. See, I'm up on the stuff. You're going to be in Emerald City Comic Con, easy for me to say, and you're going to be doing a signing at Gibson's bookstore
in Concord, New Hampshire. Yes, I love Gibson's. Wonderful store. I was up there a few years ago, and I'm trying to go back as often as I can. It's not that far a drive from me, and Concord is just such a wonderful little town.
Amazing. Your Twitter handle is at @R_A_Salvatore.
Yep.
That is also your Instagram. Facebook /The Real R.A. Salvatore. And website rasalvatore.com, which you guys can go there and get all the book. It's got its own bookstore built in and everything.
Yeah, rasalvatore.com is my wife's bookstore, and you can get signed, personalized books all the time. And if I don't say that, she won't cook me dinner right now while I'm doing this.
Okay.
Which is okay, because I'll cook my own. But I said it anyway, so I'm off the hook.
Yeah, I can hear the thing in the background. No, that's in the garbage. There goes your dinner.
No, my grandkids are here, so it's probably all gone anyway.
Oh, I suppose.
Those kids can eat.
For those that are watching the live stream, we will be doing a little Q&A afterwards, so make sure and throw your questions in there. I can't say that we're going to get to all of them, but we'll do our best. Friends and Enemies, August 22nd. We're going to be joined by Darkseid himself from Zack Snyder's Justice League. Ray Porter's going to be joining us. He's not just an actor and a voice actor for animated shows and movies. He's also one of the most sought-after audiobook narrators out there. So join us August 22nd for that. September 5th, award-winning author Tim Pratt. Known for his contributions to science fiction and fantasy, he's a Hugo Award winner. He's been nominated for Nebula Awards, Stoker Awards, and more. He's also the author of some of my favorite Paizo Pathfinder Tales books. And if there's something that he has in common with R.A. Salvatore, it's our September 19th guest. The common thread here is actor, author, audiobook narrator, Victor Bavine is going to be joining us. That's going to be September 19th. So make sure to join us. Listen, rate, review, follow, subscribe, all of the things. When you do those, it helps us and it helps our guests. So for those of you listening, and for R.A. Salvatore, thank you for listening to Epic Realms.